Part 1. The Galactic Council chamber floated in the quiet dark of space, wrapped in a bubble of artificial gravity and soft blue light. It was built on the edge of the Xylos Prime asteroid belt, a place chosen for its neutrality. 212 species sat in curved rows, their forms as different as the stars they came from. Some had too many eyes, others none at all. Some breathed methane, others lived in liquid tanks. But all of them shared one thing right now: worry. At the center of the chamber, High Arbiter Kalorn stood on the speaking platform. He was tall with smooth gray skin and a voice that rumbled like distant thunder. His people, the Velen, had led the council for 3 centuries. They were known for patience, logic, and long memories. But today, even Kalorn's calm seemed thin. 3 times, he said, his words echoing through the translators built into every seat. We have extended an invitation to humanity. 3 times they have declined, and now they have walked away. A murmur moved through the chamber like wind through dry grass. Delegates shifted in their seats. Tentacles curled tighter. Gills flared. Everyone had heard the news, but hearing it spoken aloud made it real. Just 2 days earlier, the human envoy Paul Dawson had stood in this very spot. He was not like other diplomats. He wore no robes, no medals, no ceremonial armor, just a plain gray jacket and dark pants. He looked more like a teacher than a representative of a starfaring species. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, almost gentle. "Thank you for the offer," he had said, "but we're good on our own." That was it. No explanation. No demands. No threats. Just a polite refusal followed by a small smile. Then he left, walking out of the chamber without looking back. The council had expected arguments, negotiations, maybe even anger. They got none of that, and that silence scared them more than any war cry, because humanity was not weak. 10 years ago, humans were still new to the stars. They had just cracked faster-than-light travel on their own, no help from anyone. Most species needed ancient jump gates or rare crystals to cross space. Humans built engines that bent space like paper. They called them slip drives. No one else understood how they worked. Then came the Shield of Luna. During a border skirmish between the Krell and the Miri, a stray antimatter missile veered toward Earth's moon. Before anyone could react, a shimmering dome appeared over the lunar surface. The missile hit it and vanished, absorbed, not exploded. The humans never said how they did it. They just patched the crater and went back to mining helium-3 and their AIs. Well, that was another mystery. Human artificial minds didn't follow logic trees or pre-programmed rules. They learned, dreamed, even joked. One AI, nicknamed Old Man by its human crew, once reprogrammed an entire alien warship during a rescue mission, just to play chess with its captain. The captain later called it the most polite hijacking in history. Yet despite all this, humans never asked for more. They didn't want territory. They didn't seek power. They traded quietly, helped lost ships, and vanished when trouble came near. They were like ghosts with starships, present but never staying long. Now they were gone completely. All human embassies across the galaxy had shut down. Their trade ships stopped running. Their research stations went dark. Even their listening posts near the Rim Nebula, places no one even knew existed, were empty. It was as if humanity had never been there at all. Back on Earth, in a small office in Denver, Paul Dawson sat by a window. Rain tapped softly against the glass. He held a mug of coffee, steam curling into the air. On the wall behind him was a photo of Earth from space, blue, green, and fragile. Lena Ortiz leaned against the door frame, arms crossed. She had short black hair, sharp eyes, and a voice that could cut through bureaucracy like a laser. She used to translate alien languages for the United Earth Diplomatic Corps. Now she was one of the few who still spoke to Paul. "They're panicking," she said. Paul took a sip. "Good. You really think this will work?" "I don't know," he admitted. "But we can't keep pretending to be small just so they don't feel scared. Every time we showed them something new, they called it a weapon. Every time we offered help, they asked what we wanted in return. They don't trust kindness unless it comes with a price tag." Lena sighed and walked over to the window. "They'll come after us. The Krell already moved 3 fleets to the Sol border. Let them try," Paul said, not with anger but with quiet certainty. "They'll find nothing but empty space and old satellites." He wasn't lying. Earth's defenses weren't hidden in bunkers or orbiting cannons. They were woven into the fabric of human life, into the way their cities recycled air, The way their ships healed their own hulls. The way their children learned quantum physics before algebra. Humanity's strength wasn't in what they built, but in who they were, and who they were was something the galaxy wasn't ready to understand. On Xylos Prime, the council meeting dragged on. Some delegates demanded action. "We must find them," said Councillor Vexa of the Miri, her 6 arms gesturing wildly. "If they're building something—" "They're not building anything," interrupted Envo Tar, his smooth green skin glistening under the lights. He was from Gliesa 667, a world of deep oceans and slow thoughts. Humans test things, yes, but they tear them down after. They fear what they can do more than we do. That truth hung in the air like smoke. Meanwhile, on Mars, in a dusty dome near the old terraforming hub, Danny Ruiz wiped grease from his hands. He was 24, with a crooked smile and a knack for fixing anything with wires. He'd spent the last week shutting down the last human relay station in the system. "All signals off," he said into his comm. "Power core disengaged. Backup batteries drained." "Good job, Danny," came the reply from Earth. "Last one out. Turn off the lights." He chuckled, then flipped the final switch. The hum of machinery faded. The screens went black. Outside, the red sand stretched forever under a pale pink sky. No ships, no drones, no voices from the stars, just silence. And in that silence, the galaxy began to feel something it hadn't in centuries. Fear. Not because humans attacked, but because they left. And in their absence, the universe felt suddenly unbalanced. Paul knew this would happen. Lena knew it too. They had argued for years. Stay and risk being used, or leave and risk being forgotten. In the end, they chose truth over comfort. Now, the council would have to face a simple fact. Humanity was not the problem. Humanity was the answer, and answers, once removed, leave only questions behind. The rain in Denver slowed to a drizzle. Paul set his empty mug on the desk. Somewhere far away, a starship named Willow powered down its engines near the edge of the Orc cloud. Waiting, not hiding, just watching. Because walking away didn't mean giving up. It meant giving others a chance to catch up. Part 2. Weeks passed, and the silence from humanity grew louder than any war drum. At first, the galaxy tried to ignore it. Trade routes adjusted. Diplomatic schedules were rewritten. But soon, the absence became impossible to overlook. Human colonies, once bright dots on every star map, flickered out one by one. Not with explosions or distress calls, but with quiet finality. No signals, no power signatures, no life signs. Just empty domes, drifting ships, and silent cities. The Council sent scout drones to the nearest human outpost near Proxima Centauri. The drones entered orbit, scanned the surface, and transmitted back grainy images of tidy streets, closed doors, and solar panels covered in dust. Then, halfway through their second pass, the drones vanished. No wreckage, no energy spikes. They simply stopped answering. Panic began to spread like a slow virus. On the Krell homeworld, military leaders held emergency briefings behind sealed doors. They had always seen humans as unpredictable, but never as a true threat. Now they weren't so sure. What if this was a trick? What if humans were gathering in secret, building something terrible in the dark? Orders went out. Double patrols along the Sol border, activate deep space sensors, prepare for worst-case scenarios. The Miri took a different path. Councillor Vexa argued that humans must have discovered a new form of stealth technology, something that could hide entire planets. She pushed for a full scan of subspace, convinced humanity was watching them right now, laughing from the shadows. Her fear turned to anger, and her anger turned to accusations. She blamed the Xanthari for secretly aiding humans. The Xanthari denied it, but their tone was sharp. Old tensions, once kept in check by human mediators, began to crack open. Back on Earth, no one was laughing. In a hidden facility buried beneath the ice of Europa, Dr. Nora Finch watched data streams scroll across a wall of screens. She was in her late 40s with tired eyes and a mind that never stopped working. Beside her, Ben Carter leaned against a console, chewing on a protein bar. He had messy brown hair and a habit of making jokes at the worst times. "They're losing it out there," Ben said, nodding at a feed showing a Krell warship firing warning shots at a civilian freighter that strayed too close to their border. "Of course they are," Nora replied. "We spent 50 years quietly patching holes in their systems. Navigation grids, comms relays, even their climate models after the Helios disaster. They never knew we were doing it. Now the patches are gone and everything's falling apart. She tapped a key and a new graph appeared. It showed ripples in subspace, tiny tears forming near high-traffic jump lanes. These weren't natural. They were side effects of reckless hyperdrive use, something human engineers had solved decades ago with harmonic dampeners. But the rest of the galaxy still used brute force drives that tore at the fabric of space. We told them to slow down, Nora murmured. They called us paranoid. A week earlier, a Xanthari cargo hauler had vanished near the Orion Spur. No mayday, no debris, just gone. Now similar reports came in daily, ships entering jump points and never coming out the other side. Some reappeared weeks later, crew aged decades babbling about the screaming dark. Others never returned at all. The council held another emergency session. This time voices were raised. Fingers were pointed. N. Votar, the calm amphibian from Glisa 667, tried to speak reason. This is not human sabotage, he said, his voice slow and wet like water over stone. This is consequence. They walked away, and now we face what we ignored. But fear drowned out wisdom. In the Kuiper Belt, far from prying eyes, Danny Ruiz worked alone inside a small dome-shaped station. He wasn't supposed to be there. Officially, the station, called Beacon 9, had been decommissioned. But Danny knew better. He'd helped build it. It wasn't a listening post or a weapons lab. It was a stabilizer, part of a network humans had quietly placed across the galaxy. Each beacon sent out a low-frequency pulse that smoothed out subspace turbulence. They were like lighthouses for reality itself, keeping the sea of space calm for travelers. Humans never told anyone about them. They just kept them running, year after year, without credit or reward. Now Danny was shutting Beacon 9 down. His fingers moved over the control panel with practiced ease. Lights blinked red, then amber, then off. The hum of the core faded to silence. Outside the viewport, the icy rocks of the outer system drifted in eternal night. No stars blinked back. No signals called out. He recorded a final log. Beacon 9 offline. All systems stable at time of shutdown. No anomalies detected. He paused, then added softly, "Hope you figure it out soon." He boarded his shuttle and lifted off, leaving the station dark and cold behind him. On Mars, the last human habitat dome powered down. Solar arrays folded like sleeping wings. Air recyclers sighed their final breath. The red dust began to creep through cracks, covering floors, consoles, and forgotten coffee mugs. A child's drawing, stick figures under a yellow sun, fluttered to the ground in an empty hallway. Back on Earth, Paul and Lena stood on a hill outside Denver. The city lights glittered below, but the sky above was strangely empty. No alien ships hovered in orbit. No comms chatter filled the airwaves. Just the wind, the trees, and the quiet hum of a world left to itself. "They think we're hiding," Lena said. "We are," Paul replied, "but not from them. From what we might become if we stay involved." He meant it. Humanity had seen what power did to others. The Krell's hunger for control, the Miri's paranoia, the Xanthari's pride. Humans had the same flaws, but they also had something rare, the will to walk away before those flaws turned to ruin. In orbit, the last human satellite, a simple weather monitor, sent its final transmission. Then its batteries died. Its solar panels stopped turning. It became just another piece of space junk, circling a planet that no longer needed to prove itself to anyone. Meanwhile, on the edge of known space, a Krell patrol ship detected a faint energy signature near the ruins of a human mining outpost. They moved in, weapons hot. What they found was not a weapon or a trap, but a garden. Rows of earth plants, wheat, tomatoes, sunflowers, growing in hydroponic trays, still alive, still green. A small robot tended them, humming softly. It turned its lens toward the Krell soldiers and beeped a friendly greeting. Confused, the Krell commander ordered a scan. The garden was harmless, just food, just life. But as they left, one young officer looked back at the green shoots, glowing under artificial suns, and wondered why humans would leave. Something so peaceful behind the answer was simple. They didn't leave it behind. They left it as a message. Life continues, even when you're not watching. And in the growing chaos of the galaxy, that message was the quietest and most powerful of all. Part 3. Without humans around, the galaxy began to tear itself apart. It started small. Missed trade deliveries, delayed rescue missions, broken promises. But soon the cracks widened. The Krell accused the Miri of stealing dark matter fuel from a shared depot near the Cygnus Rift. The Miri denied it. then accused the Krell of planting evidence. Neither side trusted the other's data logs. Without human mediators, people like Paul Dawson, who once sat between warring factions and asked simple questions like, "What do you really need?" There was no one to calm the storm. Fights that used to end with handshakes now ended with gunfire. The Zenthari conquered, once a peaceful alliance of ocean world colonies, blockaded a neutral trade corridor after a Krell freighter ignored their customs inspection. The Krell responded by sending warships. The Miri saw this as a chance to weaken both sides and move their own fleet into position. What should have been a minor dispute over shipping fees turned into a standoff that threatened to ignite a full war. The Galactic Council tried to intervene, but their peacekeeping fleet was lost without human support. For years, human engineers had quietly upgraded the fleet's navigation systems, sensor arrays, and comms relays. Human-designed AI co-pilots helped alien crews make split-second decisions in battle. Now those systems were failing. Ships got lost in jump space. Orders arrived hours late. Friendly fire incidents doubled in a month. Envotar watched it all from his private chamber on Xylos Prime. He sat in still water, his gills pulsing slowly, his mind heavy. He remembered the last time he spoke to a human, Lena Ortiz, during a border crisis 5 years ago. She had handed him a cup of tea and said, "You don't need to win. You just need to understand." He hadn't understood then. He did now. But understanding wouldn't stop bullets. On the front lines, things got worse. A Miri scout ship strayed too close to a Krell mining operation. Warning shots turned into a chase. The scout fled into a jump lane near the Orion Spur, the same place where ships had begun vanishing. It never came out the other side. The Miri claimed the Krell destroyed it. The Krell said it was swallowed by a subspace rift. Both were probably right, but no one could prove anything. And with every lost ship, fear grew. Deep in the Kuiper Belt, inside a hidden research station buried under ice and rock, Dr. Nora Finch studied the latest data. Her screens showed a map of the galaxy, dotted with red markers, each one a subspace anomaly. Some were small, harmless ripples. Others were growing, twisting space like a knot in a rope. "They're getting stronger," she said, her voice low. Ben Carter stood behind her, arms crossed. He hadn't shaved in days. "Because no one's listening. They're pushing their drives harder, jumping more often, ignoring the warnings." Nora nodded. The beacons were holding it together. Now they're off. Project Horizon wasn't a weapon. It never was. It was a safety net, a network of quantum-entangled beacons placed near unstable regions of space. Each one sent out a stabilizing pulse, smoothing out the wrinkles in space-time caused by reckless hyperdrive use. Humans had built them over decades, installing them during routine maintenance stops or accidental drifts near key systems. No one noticed. No one asked. Now, with the beacons powered down, reality itself was fraying. A freighter carrying medical supplies to a Zenthari colony vanished near Tau Ceti. A Krell patrol ship emerged from a jump point with half its hull aged to rust. A Miri science vessel reported hearing voices in the static, voices that spoke in perfect ancient Earth languages no alien should know. The Council called it sabotage. Nora called it physics. "They think we turned off the beacons to punish them," Ben said, rubbing his eyes. "Maybe we did," Nora replied. "Not on purpose. But sometimes the only way people learn is by feeling the weight of what they've lost." She pulled up an old file, video from Earth, 50 years ago. A child learning to ride a bike. The parent lets go of the seat. The child wobbles, falls, gets back up. That's how you learn balance. Not by being held forever. Humanity had been holding the galaxy's seat for too long. Back on Mars, the red dust had covered everything. But in one sealed chamber beneath the surface, a single light still glowed. Inside, Danny Ruiz sat alone, reviewing final system logs. He wasn't supposed to be there. His orders were clear: shut it all down and leave. But he stayed, just a little longer. He watched feeds from across the galaxy. News clips, emergency broadcasts, distress calls. He saw alien faces twisted in fear, confusion, rage. He saw ships burning in silent space. He saw children evacuated from colonies that might soon be battle zones. He thought about the garden the Krell found, the sunflowers still blooming in the dark. He thought about Paul's quiet voice saying, "We're good on our own." He thought about Lena's sharp eyes and Ben's dumb jokes and Nora's endless patience. They weren't hiding. They were waiting, but waiting for what? For the galaxy to break or to bend? On Xylos Prime, the council met again. This time there were no speeches, just silence. Even Counselor Vexa sat still, her many limbs folded tight. The truth was sinking in. This wasn't human aggression. This was human absence. And absence, it turned out, could be just as destructive as war. Envotar finally spoke. "We built a house on sand," he said, his voice slow and wet. "And the humans were the ones holding up the walls. Now they've stepped back, and the sand is shifting." No one argued, because they all knew it was true. In the quiet of the Kuiper station, Nora turned off the main display. The red dots vanished. The room went dark except for the soft glow of emergency lights. "They'll either fix this themselves," she said, "or they'll come asking for help." Ben nodded. "And if they do, then we'll decide if they've earned it." Outside, the ice stretched forever. Stars burned cold and distant. Somewhere out there, a ship was falling into a rift it couldn't see. Somewhere else, a child was crying because the lights went out and no one knew why. And somewhere, deep in the heart of Earth, humanity held its breath, not out of fear but out of hope. Because walking away wasn't the end, it was the test, and the galaxy was failing. Part 4. A Xanthari cruiser limped through the edge of the Sol system, its hull scarred, its engines sputtering. It had fled a brutal ambush near the Cygnus Rift, caught between Krell missiles and Miri boarding pods. Half its crew was dead, the rest were wounded, dehydrated, and running on fumes. Captain Relis, a broad-shouldered Xanthari with deep blue skin and tired eyes, knew they wouldn't last another day without help. He did something no Xanthari had done in years. He sent a universal distress call, broadcast on all channels in all known languages, even the old Earth ones. It was a desperate move. The Sol system was empty now. Humans were gone, but maybe, just maybe, someone was still listening. To his shock, someone answered. Not a warship, not a drone. Just a small white vessel with smooth lines and no weapons ports. It matched no known design in the Xanthari database. The voice that came through the comm was calm, female, and spoke perfect Xanthari with a soft Earth accent. "This is the medical frigate Willow. We read your distress signal. Hold position. We're coming alongside." Captain Relis didn't trust it. Nothing in this war was kind. But he had no choice. He gave the order to stand down weapons and open the airlock. Minutes later, 2 humans boarded his ship. One was a woman named Ellie Grant. She wore a plain blue jumpsuit with a red cross on the sleeve. Her dark hair was pulled back, her eyes steady. The other was Chris Monroe, lean and quiet, carrying a med kit and a handheld scanner. Ellie didn't ask questions. She didn't demand surrender. She just walked straight to the wounded and got to work. She stitched gashes, reset broken bones, injected nanites to fight infection. Chris checked life support, rerouted power from dead systems, and patched a leaking oxygen line with sealant from his belt. The Xanthari crew watched in silence. They had been taught that humans were unpredictable, dangerous, maybe even cruel, but these two moved with care, with focus, with no sign of fear or judgment. One young Xanthari soldier, barely out of training, whispered to his friend, "Why are they helping us?" Ellie overheard. She looked up from bandaging a burn. "Because you needed it. That was all." After 6 hours, the worst of the wounded were stable. Ellie and Chris prepared to leave. Captain Relis stopped them at the airlock. "Why?" he asked. "Your people walked away." "You owe us nothing," Ellie met his gaze. "We didn't abandon you. We just stopped pretending we could fix you," Chris added. "You have to want to fix yourselves first." Then they were gone, their ship vanishing into the dark like a sigh. But the story didn't vanish. Back on the Xanthari homeworld, the rescued crew told everyone what happened. They described the humans' calm hands, their quiet words, their ship with no guns. They spoke of kindness without price. At first, many didn't believe them. But scans of the cruiser showed no tampering, no trackers, no hidden weapons. Just clean repairs and medical logs written in simple, clear notes. The story spread. It reached the Miri, who scoffed at first, until one of their own scout ships, damaged in a skirmish, drifted near human space and received the same silent aid. No questions, no demands, just help. Then it reached the Krell. A Krell freighter, lost in a subspace storm, was guided safely out by an unmarked human probe that spoke only in navigation pulses. When the freighter's captain asked who sent it, the probe replied with a single word. "Remember what?" The answer came slowly, Remember that humans never attacked. Remember that they shared cures during the Helios plague. Remember that they rebuilt a Miri nursery after a reactor meltdown. Remember that they once gave their last fuel cell to a stranded Xanthari science vessel. They had been helping all along, quietly, consistently, without fanfare. On Xylos Prime, Envotar called for an emergency session. This time the chamber was quieter. The anger had burned out, leaving only exhaustion and shame. We were wrong, Tar said, his voice echoing in the still water of his tank. We saw their power and called it a threat. We saw their silence and called it secrecy, but it was restraint. They held back not because they feared us, but because they respected us enough to let us grow. Counselor Vexa, once the loudest voice against humanity, sat with her limbs folded tight. She said nothing, but her silence spoke louder than any speech. The truth settled over the council like morning fog. Humanity wasn't the danger. Humanity was the balance, and by pushing them away, the galaxy had tipped into chaos. Meanwhile, on the Willow, Ellie and Chris floated in the medbay drinking recycled tea. They had known this would happen eventually. Paul had warned them, "One act of kindness will do more than 1,000 threats. Do you think they'll change?" Chris asked. Ellie looked out the viewport at the stars. "I don't know. But they're starting to see us clearly now. Not as monsters, not as gods, just people who care." Back on Earth in Denver, Paul watched a newsfeed from the Xanthari homeworld. It showed the rescued crew standing before their leaders, describing the humans not as enemies but as neighbors who had simply stepped back to give them room. Lena stood beside him. "It's working." "Maybe," Paul said. "But real change takes more than gratitude. It takes choice." And the galaxy was finally being given one. In the Kuiper Belt, Nora and Ben received a new signal, not a distress call, but a request. From Envotar. It was simple, humble, and direct. "We see now what we lost. If you are willing, we would like to talk." Nora didn't answer right away. She looked at Ben. He shrugged. "They didn't earn it yet. But they're trying." She nodded. Then she typed a single word back. "Soon." Not yes. Not no. Just soon. Because trust once broken takes time to rebuild. But it can be rebuilt. On Mars, the dust still covered the empty domes. But in orbit, a single human satellite powered up, just for a moment, to send a clean navigation pulse through a troubled jump lane. No one saw it. No one knew. But a Xanthari freighter made it safely to port that day, its crew unaware they had just been guided by a ghost. And in the quiet dark between stars, the Willow turned toward the next call. Not as saviors, just as helpers, because humanity had never left. They had only been waiting for the galaxy to remember what kindness looked like. Part 5. The Galactic Council did something it had never done before. It sent a single ship, unarmed and unmarked, to the edge of the Sol system. No fleet, no demands. Just one vessel carrying every major delegate, Krell, Miri, Xanthari, and dozens more, led by Envotar himself. They came not as rulers, but as students. They came to listen. They found Luna Station empty. No guards, no banners. No speeches waiting. Just a clean, quiet docking bay and a single terminal glowing softly in the center of the main chamber. On the screen was a message, plain and simple, from Paul Dawson. "We walked away because you kept asking us to be less than we are. Now you know what happens when we're gone. The choice is yours, grow up or fade away. No signature. No threats. Just truth." The delegate stood in silence for a long time. Counselor Vexa touched the screen with one trembling limb. She remembered every time she had called humans reckless, dangerous, untrustworthy. Now she saw it clearly. They had been the only ones acting with true responsibility. They had power enough to rule the stars, but chose instead to heal, to help, to hold back. Envotar bowed his head. "We were children," he said, "and they were the parents who finally let us fall." Back on Earth, in a forest clearing in Oregon, Paul stood beside Lena. The sun was setting, painting the trees gold and red. Fireflies blinked in the cool evening air. They had watched the council ship arrive on a private feed. They knew what the message meant. It wasn't surrender. It wasn't begging. It was the first honest step the galaxy had taken in centuries. "They'll figure it out," Lena said. "Maybe, Paul replied. Or maybe they'll finally ask us for help, not as subjects, but as equals. He meant it. Humanity wasn't waiting to be begged. They were waiting to be understood. The difference was everything. In orbit, unseen by any scanner, the Willow and dozens of other human ships powered up their drives. Not to flee, not to fight, just to be ready. Hidden in asteroid belts tucked behind moons, floating in the silent dark, they were there. Not as a threat, but as a promise, because humanity had never truly left. They had only stepped back to give others room to stand. On Mars, Danny Ruiz stood in the old relay station, now reactivated. He wasn't alone this time. A small team of engineers, human and, for the first time, Xanthari, worked side by side, calibrating a new subspace stabilizer. The Xanthari engineer, a young woman named Kira, asked careful questions. Danny answered without pride, without secrecy. Just facts. Just help. In the Kuiper Belt, Nora and Ben monitored the galaxy-wide network as the first new beacons came online, this time built and maintained by a joint team of humans and aliens. The red dots on Nora's screen began to fade. The ripples in space smoothed out. Ships stopped vanishing. Jump lanes became safe again. It's working, Ben said, smiling for the first time in months. Because they're doing it with us now, Nora replied. Not because we're forcing it. Because they chose to. That was the key. The galaxy hadn't been saved by human power. It had been saved by human patience, by the quiet refusal to become what others feared, by the courage to walk away so others could learn to walk on their own. On Xylos Prime, the Council held its first true meeting in years. No shouting, no accusations. Just plans. Plans for shared navigation grids, joint disaster response, open-source science. The Krell offered to share their dark matter research. The Miri proposed a new treaty of mutual aid. The Xanthari volunteered to host the first human-alien medical exchange. And for the first time, they didn't ask what humanity wanted in return. They simply said thank you. Paul and Lena watched the broadcast from their cabin in the woods. Rain began to fall softly, tapping on the roof like a lullaby. Lena leaned her head on Paul's shoulder. Do you think it'll last? She asked. No, Paul said honestly, but it doesn't have to last forever. It just has to last long enough for them to learn. And learning had begun. Far out near the Oort cloud, the Willow received a new signal. Not a distress call, not a command, just a simple message from a Miri science vessel. We fixed the oxygen recycler. Thank you for the diagram. Ellie smiled and typed back, You're welcome. Let us know if you need anything else. Then she turned to Chris. Ready to head home? Not yet, he said, pointing to a new blip on the scanner. Freighter in the Tau Ceti lane. Looks lost. Then let's go, Ellie said. And the Willow turned, not toward war, not toward glory, but toward the next quiet act of kindness. Because that was who humans were. Not conquerors, not saviors. Just people who cared enough to walk away, and wise enough to come back when the time was right. In the forest, Paul watched the fireflies dance in the rain. Above him, the stars burned steady and bright. The galaxy was still broken in places. Wars would flare again. Mistakes would be made. But now there was hope. Not because humans returned with weapons or wisdom, but because the galaxy had finally chosen to see them clearly. And in that clarity, a new future began, not led by humans, but shared with them. As the night deepened, Paul whispered one last thing, not to Lena, but to the sky itself. We're still here, and somewhere, in the silent dark between stars, 100 human ships echoed the truth, not with words, but with light, with action, with quiet, steady presence. Humanity hadn't left the galaxy. They had simply given it a chance to grow up, and now it was trying.